It being the first street in town, it was named Main Street. But owing to its low elevation and the law of gravitation, the water would find a level in the street. And as the immense travel created an abundance of mud, the street was nicknamed Mud Street, a name without music or elegance. At that time, in 1880, there were, in all probability, 2,000 houses and 10 or 12,000 souls in the health resort. Only 3 streets, Main or Mud, Spring, and Mountain, were then known as thoroughfares and dug out so that many teams could travel safely when all went in the same direction. But when the teams met, it invariably created inconvenience, as they frequently were compelled to back, at times, several rods to allow a passage, as the track was too narrow for more than one team at a time. Thus wrote L.J. Kelklosh in his book, The Healing Fountain, in 1880. This long view shows North Main Street before the Great Fires, when wooden buildings lined both sides of the narrow street. In the early days, this was a lively part of town. In 1886, this block to the south offered a shooting gallery, bowling alley, saloons, a cobbler, stores selling meat, general merchandise, hardware, and a barber shop. The Grand Central Hotel is the oldest continuously operated hotel in Eureka Springs. It was a stage stop and later catered to those arriving by rail. The original wooden hotel burned in 1892 and was replaced with this brick one, which proudly billed itself as the only brick fireproof hotel in the city, with Onyx Springs water on each floor. The building changed names and owners over the years. By the 1920s, the block was much quieter, with just the Grand Central Hotel and the Walker Brothers selling dry goods and notions next door. The deep ravine then made up the rest of the block and was covered with a large platform and used for outdoor events. Both buildings were renovated by a local businessman in the 1980s, and this is once again a lively spot. Across the street on the west side of Main Street is Tibbs Alley, another wooden stairway street. Next to the alley is the Harkin Building. This served as a hardware store, saddle shop, and as a furniture store in the 1950s. After decades as a white modernized building called the Lamplighter, new owners restored the traditional storefront in 2007. To the north is the Bergdorf Block, named for the large structure on the northern edge of the block. This may be the oldest commercial building in Eureka Springs. After a series of fires swept through the town, new commercial buildings had to be made of stone or brick. This block of buildings has changed little over the years. In the past, it held grocery stores, meat markets, general merchandise stores, and a livery stable. The block continued to house a similar mix of businesses until the 1980s, including the oldest grocery store in town, Harp's Grocery Store, which the elder Bergdorf originally established in 1885. These spots later became a center for the revival of pride in Ozark heritage, led by sisters from one of the town's most famous families, Edna Pike Bergdorf and Zoe Pike Harp and their husbands. Back behind the Bergdorf block on Jackson Street is Jacob's Ladder, a long stairway leading up to many of the spring reservation parks on East Mountain and Hatchet Hall, the last home of fiery leader of the temperance movement, Carrie A. Nation.